conference, and with me is today Ankur Rudra, who is the head of APAC, Telecom and India TMT. Ankur, thank you very much for joining us on ET Now. To begin with, IT, that's a talk of the conference as well. I think if H-1B didn't happen over the weekend, something would, I think quick commerce would be the talk, but now IT is the talk. What's your initial assessment of the entire H-1B visa?
Thank you, Sajid, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the question. I think the way we are thinking about this is that at a very outset, at a headline level, with such a significant increase in fees, this completely prices out this as a source of labor for the industry, because effectively it's comparable to what the average wages are, as an example. Now, there is a small chance that there is litigation, that this, there is some chance that there is litigation against this and doesn't really stand up in court. But to the extent it does go ahead, we think companies will try significantly to change their supply chain, change the model. It starts with trying to offshore more of the work, getting more done in India. That is something that I think both larger enterprises and IT services vendors will try to do. It will also, there will be a lot more focus on local hiring, of course, which is probably one of the intentions of the proclamation. So there will be more local hiring, and there also will be a lot more of focus on using nearshore resources, for example, from Canada or Mexico. So we hear all of those are the sort of options. Now, the worst case, if people choose to use H-1Bs only if clients insist on that, then the dependence on H-1Bs has been coming down. At the moment, around 20 to 50% of US on-site staff for various companies are on these visas on an overall stock basis. And if they try to get new visas over the next 3 years, I think our calculation is you might have a 2 to 6% annual impact on earnings. But it doesn't seem to make economic sense, so we don't think people will do that. I think the labor supply value chain will change quite materially on the back of this.
Do you think that this will lead to more of hiring locally for them, or companies or financial institutions which are the biggest customers for Indian IT, they will come to India and set up their own global capability centers?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I think we will see a combination of both. To be perfectly, I think, honest about the whole thing. So we will see more local hiring, but to the extent that talent is not available, in a very significant way in the US, would necessitate probably opening up a more global captive center. So we've seen GCCs or captive centers, growing, capability centers growing a lot over the last 5 years, last 10 years. That potentially gets an acceleration on the back of this, because you probably need to have very senior resources who you wanted to access otherwise. So you'll see that, and also you'll see offshoring. So I think both captive center expansion, more offshore work expansion, I think both should see an expansion as a result of this.
And how do you see companies navigating this? Because you spoke of the fact that they could be nearshoring, but does the US Mexico-Canada agreement allows for services, or was it only meant for goods there?
So I think what is going to happen is, on the services side, there is no tariff mechanism per se for any geography. So tariffs do not apply to services for multiple reasons, but one, there is no precedence for tariffs on services. There is no mechanism for tariffs on services. So the service can be potentially sourced from India, could be sourced from a different low-cost location, including nearshore geographies like Canada and Mexico. So there is, and again, the US has a trade surplus on digital services, so it's unlikely that they will be thinking about tariffs on services. So there is nothing to block using Mexico or Canada as sources of labor. But I think the nuances will be slightly different. So the more senior employees can be based there, where the service is provided from there. In case you need more frequent meetings, you can probably do that in the US.
Last 2 quarters, the chatter has been about how GCC may impact Indian IT companies, because it will take away some of the businesses. Now we're looking at more GCCs coming into India, potentially because of this H-1B visa which is there, or at least increase in the GCC activity in India. Will that be a supplementary activity for the Indian IT companies who can now service the GCCs in India rather than going onshore?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So I think, look, GCC activity has been increasing for the last 5-6 years. In fact, if you look at the H-1B, who's been benefiting from H-1B, it's not the top IT services companies from India anymore. It is the large global enterprises. It is the likes of big tech. It's the likes of big banks.
The Amazons and the Google.
That's correct. That's right. So it's those names, right? So they're already using India as a talent hub. They already have significant captive centers in India. To the extent that even they may not want to use this anymore, likelihood that some of that, is done by expanding capability centers in India a lot more. And so GCCs have been a source of work for Indian IT companies. I think this year, if I'm right, more than 4 or 5 companies separately have announced a special GCC initiative,
Yes.
where they want to work with GCCs and help them expand their services. So there will be, opportunities for work. GCCs come in multiple forms. There is an opportunity for IT services companies to partner and help create GCCs in India for their clients. So I think that's definitely a source of new opportunity also.
And how do you see Indian IT companies transitioning from here on? Because of course, partnering with GCCs would be a not so high-tech job kind of thing, right? We are talking about providing high-tech services and increasingly, we are navigating towards how employees could be AI ready and working on those AI models and others across at least the top 5 or 6 companies are talking about that. How do you see that transition happening for IT? Because at some point in time in the past, we used to look at the employee count every quarter to see what the kind of confidence in revenues there. Now that employee count is no longer one of the metrics for anyone.
Yeah, so I think there are multiple aspects to that conversation, right? One is that increasingly the GCCs are driving a lot of new technology initiatives. So a lot of the new initiatives around AI, cloud, digital is driven by the GCC. So it definitely helps to partner with them to be part of the innovation conversation. So typically IT companies work on either the business side, which is the innovation conversation, or the cost side, which is run the business side.
Yes.
Right. So if you want to, increasingly most companies want to optimize on the run the business and expand on change the business. So if they want to participate on the innovation side, it is helpful to partner with GCC in that regard. In terms of the impact on AI, AI can potentially impact the overall volume of work or deflate it to an extent for the next few years. Our estimates is something like 2 to 3% potentially is incremental deflation because of AI, which is already something the industry is seeing. But everybody is trying to renew their types of services to be very relevant. And I think and being ready on the AI front, partnering with the GCCs very proactively, I think they'll all be part of the same conversation.
From an earnings point of view, IT has been the biggest underperformer in the last 6 months, or since the beginning of the year actually. How do you see the earnings pan out for the Indian IT companies? Is 26 going to be a flat revenue growth quarter for them, or do you see some kind of revival happening in 27 as well?
Yeah, I think you're right. IT services, the Nifty IT has underperformed this year very meaningfully. It's down about 20% for a multitude of reasons, including the fact that growth was being softer this year because of macro, the trade uncertainty, the tariff uncertainty made it very bad. There is also concern about AI deflation, which we just spoke about a minute ago. That's also part of the conversation, which is sort of impacting how these companies do. In terms of growth, I think this, because of the twin impact of the macro and the impact of the AI side, this will be a relatively weak growth year. We've had 2 weak growth years. This will probably be the 3rd weak growth year. So we're not expecting very strong growth this year. No meaningful acceleration for any company. It's going to be flat, if not slight softness relative in the growth front. Maybe next year, if the macro headwinds go away, we get back to growth. Our medium to long-term assumption on growth is about 5 to 7%. But this year is definitely not a year we'll see growth of that level. And it is, so far, it's been the macro conversation and the AI conversation. This uncertainty on visas may not impact business immediately, but it might impact client decision-making to an extent.
Ankur, last September, August, when the Fed paused raise, we saw discretionary spends falling off.
Yeah.
Now the Fed is coming back with a rate cut cycle, and it's expected that at least 3 may come in by the end of the calendar year. Do you expect discretionary spends coming back for IT companies?
Yeah, so if you break up the industry mix for the IT companies, the biggest industry is financial services, which has actually been doing well in the last 1 year. Further rate cuts might help. It might help the the more cyclical businesses within financial services like investment banking, investment management, and so on and so forth, payments, etc. I think those parts might pick up. Mortgage might pick up to an extent. Some of the more cyclical industries, like industrials which are rate sensitive, they might see discretionary spend pick up. So there is an expectation with rates being cut, a segment of the economy which has been under pressure recovers. So to that extent, we might see some discretionary pickup, but I think rate cuts alone will not be enough. We probably need a change in the macro, especially more stability on the trade side as well. Especially for industries like financial services is already doing well, but industries like retail, manufacturing, which have been under pressure on the trade side. So if you see more stability there and rate cuts, I think that would be helpful.
Moving away from IT to another sector which is in play here, the food delivery and quick commerce. How do you see that sector panning out? Do you, the kind of aggression that's coming on the ground by the Blinkits, the Instamarts, the Zeptos and others, and now the big players are now entering into the market. How do you see the quick commerce play panning out?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So on the quick commerce side, we definitely see this as a retail channel expanding at a very rapid pace. There's a very rapid channel shift going on where they're gaining against the general trade, the modern trade and the e-commerce guys on a consistent basis, and we expect growth to be very, very strong. We've had triple-digit growth for over a year now. We think that will continue. Categories are getting added quite a bit, and I think new competition is definitely adding to helping more consumers adopt this. It began with some of the pure plays, some of the names you mentioned, which began this model, but I think all the e-commerce companies are responding to it by creating their own quick commerce arms. All the modern trade companies, the leading ones, are responding to it by creating their own arms. So over time, this will be a relevant channel. In fact, I think the growth in e-commerce is potentially being taken away by this quite a bit. General trade is taken away by this. So we think growth will be very strong. Now, competitive intensity has been up and down to an extent. We saw a significant competitive intensity between the three pure plays end of last year and early this year. That has become probably a bit more reasonable and benign, but increasingly there is competition from the modern trade as a defense, from the e-commerce companies as a defense to an extent. So we think there will be continued competitive activity. Competitive activity takes place in two or three ways. One is opening dark stores. So dark stores, we've seen from last year when there were 1,800 dark stores across the top three players, it's gone to about 4,000 dark stores. And if you include the other players, it's probably 5,000. So we think we'll have more dark store additions. Our data for the last couple of months is indicating that dark store additions has begun to pick up after seeing a bit of a slowdown in Q1. Q2 seen probably a bit of a pickup. So we are seeing that will continue at a strong pace. Second is on terms of performance marketing. Performance marketing was extremely aggressive at the beginning of the year, became a bit more benign, and again is beginning to rise again. And third is in terms of discounts. So discounts is rising quite a bit. Our data on discounts suggests that we are seeing that beginning to trend.
Yeah, I mean last 3 quarters discounts are trending up actually. Yeah. So and that's going to impact the earnings for many of these companies. So while I think the companies like Eternal or others, Swiggy, they've been talking about hitting a break even or a profitability. Do you think that's going to be pushed to the next financial year, given the fact that QC or the quick commerce is going to have a much bigger dent on the profitability?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that there is the three components I mentioned, right? The dark store additions, the performance marketing, and the discounts. All of them impact profitability to an extent. On the dark store addition side, there has been an element of slowdown in pace versus the pace we saw at the beginning of the year. While it's still strong, the percentage of stores being added is a little bit lower, and the store vintage has become a bit more mature, and hence that was a significant drag. There were underutilized stores about 2 quarters ago. The stores are a lot more utilized now, so they're closer to profitability now than they were before. That helps. Performance marketing is not as aggressive as it was at the beginning of the year. It's still quite high, but that also helps. On the discounting side, we are seeing an element of the market which is getting splintered. There is a convenience-seeking customers which are being, which are focusing on quality and convenience and on-time delivery and availability and what have you. And there is this discount-seeking customers. So discount-seeking customers are churning a lot. So there is a segment of the market which is a bit more profitable and a segment of the market which is not profitable. And depending on what company strategies are, they'll see their own paths to success. So yeah, I think some companies will probably be able to break even this year. Other companies, it might take a bit longer.
And what?
पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्राइम पे लगाओ, डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड